in the sense that we are seeing the Big Ten, we are seeing the SEC come together and form this alliance. And I want to talk about this alliance because we know that they're going to be the two biggest conferences in college football. We've lived under this guise of a Power Five structure for an incredibly long time, at least as long as I can remember since I was born. Going into the 2000s, there was at least this idea of a Power Five. Maybe you can argue a Power Six structure back in the 2000s when the Big East was playing football, but ever since the Big East was ultimately demoralized and demolished, we've been living under this Power Five structure for quite some time. So, but now we see the Pac-12 is effectively gone. It still exists as a conference, but only Oregon State and Washington State are the only two teams in that conference right now. Who knows what the next move for the Pac-12 is going to be if the Pac-12 wants to continue to exist in any capacity. In addition, you also have, even within the Power Four, per se, if we even want to go that route, there is a clear divide at this point. Not as much of a divide as we're going to see, I think, this upcoming season. The SEC has 16 teams. The Big Ten has 18 teams. To give you an idea of how big that conference is going to be, if you fired up NCAA 14, you can't even put all of the teams in a single conference anymore if you try to realign based off of the current conference structure that we are going to have going into the 2024 season. And this also can apply for the ACC as well, although their pickups were not nearly as high profile. ACC picking up Stanford, Cal, and SMU. SMU may be a program on the rise. I respect what they're doing at SMU, champions of the American Conference, by the way, but it's not the big pickups at the Big Ten yet. They didn't get a Washington who ends up going to the national championship game. Oregon, who's finishing as a top 10 team, as well as USC and UCLA, who bring their own set of pros to the table, such as that Los Angeles market. Big advantage there for those that participate in that NIL game, and it's easy to sell warm weather in California when you're recruiting in the transfer portal as well. That always sells, regardless of whether you're going after high school kids or whether you're going after seasoned college football players. For the SEC, they picked up Texas and Oklahoma. Texas winning a national championship back in the 2000s. Oklahoma being right there, a very consistent 10-win program, one of the blue bloods of college football. They just haven't gone over that last ultimate hump. But the SEC and Big Ten, they are going to get together because, frankly, they lost faith, in my opinion, in the leadership of the NCAA. They don't think they can solve what's going on with the rampant realignment that's going on, partially caused by their own conferences, but it is what it is. NIL needs some help. I truly believe that we need some better regulation in NIL just so that we have some form of consistency that we're working through. So make sure that we're all on the same page, and also making sure that these student athletes are being compensated fairly, because these student athletes, particularly for football and basketball, they are making a significant amount of money for their respective universities, especially if you're looking at that high end of Division One. At the same time, we do also need regulation at transfer portal. I actually did not mind the NCAA having that two-time transfer rule, having it to where, okay, first time around, because listen, I remember being a college kid. I did stupid things when I was in college, right? I truly remember those things, right? It's not too long ago since I was in college, so I remember doing dumb stuff. 17, 18-year-old kids are not going to make the best decisions. That's just the end-all be-all of that. Nothing wrong with that. Most of 17, 18-year-old kids are good kids at heart. They just don't make the best decisions sometimes. So if you want to transfer one time, I never had a problem with that. I do have a problem if you trying to transfer 2, 3, 4 times and then still being able to be eligible the next year. Because at this point, it's not a dumb decision. Now you're just trying to game the system, in my opinion. So I didn't mind the NCAA having the 2-time transfer rule where, okay, you're allowed to transfer a second time, but unless you meet these specific standards, which again leads to another reason why I think the Big Ten and the SEC are losing faith. The idea of the waiver was not a bad idea. It was the execution of enforcing the waiver and how it was approved or denied. That was the issue. That was legitimately the issue. Because you have some guys that would legitimately meet all of the requirements to be eligible to play right away, and yet either it would be delayed, such as in basically in the situation of Tez Walker of North Carolina. He didn't play at the beginning of the season because his waiver was being held up for so long. It got denied, and then magically it gets approved because the NCAA was trying to say, oh, you should have filed your paperwork properly. They did. You just messed up. You can't admit to making a mistake. That's the problem. That's the core issue at heart. It's the lack of consistency, like the waiver. And then you have some guys that would get approved right away, like JT Daniels, who played at his fourth school in Rice, was able to play right away. How he's able to make that happen, I don't know. I'm glad he's able to play. Don't get me wrong. Rice, I'm sure, was happy to be that he was able to play, led them to a bowl game, didn't play in the bowl game because of medical issues. But again, that's really the issue at heart. So better enforcement of the transfer portal, better enforcement of the NIL. We'll see if this leads to a creation of a college football commissioner and a commissioner's office down the line, because it's getting out of hand. It truly is getting out of hand.